Hey guys, Mike here from Lunch Money Comics, and today I have for you a good old-fashioned YouTube community tag video. I have been tagged by a fellow comic YouTuber, as well as a fellow Mike Spider Slayer from Comic Book Corner 2.0. Mike's been doing this YouTube thing for a lot longer than me. He has fantastic energy, great comic books, and he's a huge Spider-Man fan, which I always appreciate. Well, Mike has challenged me to give you guys my top 5 favorite comic covers of all time. When he first challenged me, I was like, wow, I mean, that's a big body of work to pull from. But I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to go down this rabbit hole and I'm going to start doing research and pulling up all these, covers that are not only amazing, but have historical significance. I go back to the golden age. Now, I couldn't do any of that because once I started doing research on it, guys, I realized just how many comic books have ever come out. I couldn't curate a list of 20 books, let alone 5. I thought a much simpler thing for me to do would be to pull them from my own collection, show you my top 5 favorite covers I have. I could hold them up and show you guys right here on camera. But even that was a really daunting task. I thought I would just look behind me and see some books. No, once I started looking, I couldn't get that list down to lower than 10. Eventually, I just picked 5 books. No particular order. They're 5 books that I absolutely love the covers of. And honestly, if you ask me tomorrow or next week, I might give you a completely different list of 5 books. So I picked 5 books that I want to talk about. But this is a community tag video, so before I show you my books, I need to tag 3 other comic book YouTubers. So I'm going to pick 2 relative newcomers and 1 veteran. So the first person I'm going to tag is Martin, the Aussie comic book collector. Martin is a relatively new comic book YouTuber. He's only been doing this for about 4 or 5 months. But looking at the amount of videos he's put out, you wouldn't know it. The guy is an absolute machine. He puts out a video every day or so. And what's really cool about him, and I love the fact he does this, he doesn't have a setting like this where it's fancy books set up behind you to make it look pretty. No. He does it from a storage locker surrounded by short boxes of comics, literally. And he sits down and he goes into these boxes and pulls out seemingly random books to talk about, but they're always fascinating. And what's so cool is a lot of the books he shows, I've never even seen before. So I always learn something new from him. And guys, I tell you, he is criminally underrated. He only has 100 or so subs. You got to go over there and check it out. He has a great channel and he's incredibly knowledgeable. And again, I recently met a comic book collector from Australia, and not only was he a delightful human being, he knew his stuff. Guys, the Aussies know their stuff when it comes to comic books. So definitely head over to his channel, guys. Sub him up. You will not be disappointed. The second person I want to tag is another relative newcomer. It is Brian, aka Bigby McFly, the comic book guy. Now, Brian, despite the fact he's also only been around for about 4 or 5 months on YouTube, has had a pretty significant Instagram presence because not only is he a comic collector, he's an artist, and a very good one at that. In fact, when you go on his Instagram account, you can see some samples of his artwork. And he's just a great guy. I've actually been DMing him since before his channel came out. We kind of go back and forth. Really cool guy. And from an artistic standpoint, guys, I would love to hear his opinion on the top 5 favorite comics of all time. Again, it's just a different perspective when it's someone who's a casual viewer of art, or, like we are most comic collectors, as opposed to an actual comic book artist. So Brian, I would love to see your top 5. Can't wait to hear from you. And the last person is a veteran. I'm going to tag Joe from 360 Comics. Joe's been doing this for a long time as well, and he has fantastic books. In his collection, they are excellent. He has a much better collection than I do. And I recently had the awesome privilege of meeting Joe at the 3 Men in a Basement comic book swap. A really great guy, really great comic books that not only does he collect, but he also sells some as well. So I'd love, Joe, to hear your opinion on what your top 5 favorite covers are. Also, guys, you should definitely go over to his channel and sub him up if you haven't already, because he's closing in on 3,000 subscribers and is having a 3,000 subscriber giveaway soon. So help him get to that milestone and participate in that giveaway. So Joe, Brian, and Martin, you guys have been tagged. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. So like I said, I had a hard time narrowing this down to 5 comic books. Case in point, I'm going to give you guys a 6th honorable mention right now. In this book, I'm actually not going to show you as part of my 5 because showing it to you on the camera would not do this comic book justice at all. The book I'm talking about is JLA Avengers number 3. It's from 2003. It's the 3rd part of a 4-part storyline where there's a crossover between DC's Justice League and Marvel's The Avengers. It was a really cool storyline that sort of pit them against each other, and then of course they team up and fight the bigger threat. But what's so great about the series is that it was drawn by the incomparable George Perez. And what he did that was so cool is each one of these issues, right? They're all front and back cover, wraparound covers. For the first 3 issues, they get more complicated. So the first issue, I'm going to be showing you guys pictures while I'm talking. The first issue shows like the biggest marquee names in the Justice League and the Avengers side by side on the front and back cover. The second issue adds more superheroes. You have like the full teams of the Justice League and the Avengers. And then when you get to the third issue, it is a giant collage, a who's who of every single major Marvel and DC superhero, at least the ones in the early 2000s. It's absolutely incredible. One of those covers, the more you stare at it, the more you see, the more details, the more characters you find. And like I said, holding up in front of you guys would not do it justice. If you haven't seen this book, guys, definitely seek it out. Try to see this book for yourself in person, or at the very least, look it up online and look at the pictures so you can really zoom in and see it up close. I would love to have a poster of this cover someday. It's got to be around somewhere. So a really cool storyline, amazing comic book cover, and that is why it's absolutely on my honorable mention list. Definitely seek this one out for yourselves, guys. Okay, the first comic book on my top 5 list is right behind me. You see me wearing the Daredevil shirt. I think you know which one it is. It is this. So this is Daredevil number 8 from 1965, written, of course, by Stan Lee, but art by the legendary Wally Wood. Now, Wally Wood was sort of a legend in his own time. He was known for doing work on EC Comics as well as Mad Magazine. He had a very troubled life that was cut all too short, but most people acknowledge that he was an absolute genius. And he didn't do that many Marvel comics. And he did a very, very short run on Daredevil. In fact, he only did issues 5 through 8, where he did pencils and inks, and then issues 9 through 11, he did just the inks. Although I thought it was kind of funny that years later, like, they would call him back sometimes to do the inks on Daredevil, like if he showed up in a Fantastic Four book. I thought that was pretty cool because he did such a good job on him. And he was the originator of the Daredevil in the red suit, which was in issue number 7 when you see it for the first time. Now, this book here is known as the first appearance of Stiltman, one of the dumbest villains of all time. From a power set standpoint, guys, he's dumb, right? He's a tall guy with like robot suit with long legs. But from an aesthetic standpoint, he is one of the coolest villains to draw. And you see why right here, and you see the genius of Wally Wood. So because he's tall, you get these cool forced perspectives where it looks like you're looking up at him. But what Wally Wood does here is so great. And the way he kind of draws, Daredevil, it's almost like a spiral. It looks like he's making a circle here between Stiltman and the way Daredevil is falling. It makes it seem circular, almost dizzying. You guys know, like, when you look up at like a tall building, like a skyscraper, and you get that kind of like vertigo feeling? You get that looking at this book, right? You do. Just the way he composed this is awesome. And I love the fact that there's a little like newspaper in the corner, extra, extra, Daredevil fights Stiltman. Just really cool, really dates this firmly in the mid 60s for me. I've always loved this comic book. I love dumb villains. I love Daredevil. I love Wally Wood. Everything comes together in this book right here. One of my personal favorites. Absolutely in my top 5 list. All right, made it. It's always hairy taking stuff out of that wall bracket up there. The next one is this one here. This is Captain America 109 from 1968. Written by Stan Lee and art, of course, by Jack Kirby. You have some inks by Sid Shores as well. But yeah, this basically is the retelling of Captain America's origin story, which of course was during World War II in the Golden Age. And here we have this in 1968, the retelling for the first time in the Silver Age. Why do I like this book? Well, one, I got to give Jack Kirby some credit. How can you do a list like this without some Jack Kirby? I love the way he did Captain America. This is the iconic Captain America to me. But I also love this comic book because of how simple it is. It's simply Captain America busting out of a World War II era newspaper. It's really simple and really effective. I just think it's composed beautifully. I just love the red, white, and blue against the white background. Every time I walk in this room and I look at this wall, guys, this is one of the ones that jumps out the most to me. I've always loved it, and I have to give some credit to King Kirby himself on any list of the top 5 covers. Absolutely. Captain America 109, absolutely on my list. How can I have a YouTube community tag video from Mike Spider Slayer and not have a Spider-Man book on the list? So Mike, this is for you. I love this book. This is Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man number 101. It's from 1985, featuring art on the cover by the amazing John Byrne. Now, John Byrne's one of my favorite artists of all time because of his work on X-Men and his longtime collaboration with Chris Claremont. But I gotta say, guys, of all the work John Byrne's done, this is probably my favorite cover by him. And you can see why. This is usually known as the negative space cover. It shows Spidey in his black suit swinging over the city of New York. But what's amazing about it is that Spider-Man isn't outlined at all. In fact, this is just a black and white cover, and the way that John Byrne composed this, where you're just seeing the black void of Spider-Man's suit over the windows in the skyscraper, you can clearly see Spider-Man swinging over the city, even though there is no outline whatsoever. Really cool comic book. It's definitely unique, not something you see all the time. And this has always been high on my list of books I love. And this particular book, I really love in my collection because I found it at a yard sale down the street from me. I had it cleaned and pressed by my good friend Jeff at Comic Spa, and I submitted it to CGC, came back as a 9.4. I don't submit many books to CGC, guys, but when I do, I make sure they're really great covers that would present great on the shelf behind me. This absolutely fits the bill. One of my favorite covers of all time. Easily makes my top 5 list. Okay, we are going back to the Silver Age with this iconic comic book. This, of course, is Avengers 57 from 1968. And this, of course, is the first appearance of the Vision, drawn here very ominously by John Buscema. Now, the Vision is one of my favorite Avengers characters, hands down. He's weird, he's strange. I've always thought he was cool. I was very happy to trade for this book at a Comic-Con last fall. Very neat. But what blows me away the most about this book right here is the decision they made to compose it all in tones of red and black. I mean, think about it, guys. Like, the Vision is an incredibly colorful character. He's yellow and green and red, like almost like garishly so. Yet they make the decision that the first time people would see the Vision, well, the first time they'd see the Silver Age Vision. There was a Golden Age Vision. That's a story for another time. The first time people would see this version of the Vision was right here on the cover, all in tones of red. And whenever I look at this, I can't help but picture like a little kid in the 60s seeing this book for the first time. You know, they run down to the corner drugstore, they see this on the shelf. They see this, you know, huge character, seemingly huge, coming out of the smoke, all in dark, sinister tones of red, looming over the Avengers. It must have looked so cool and impressive to a kid back then. They must have been like, man, I gotta have that comic book. And to me, because of that decision to put this all in tones of red, it really stands out among all of those great Avengers covers from the 60s, above all of them. I mean, I think it really just stands out as absolutely one of the best from the Silver Age. So I've always loved this comic book. Very cool character. And because of that, this book will always have a prominent place on the shelf behind me. And I tell you guys, this is one of those books, every time I look at it, I think of it more as a piece of art than a comic book. It definitely falls into that. So in that reason, more than any other, is why this has to be on my top 5 list. Okay, so when Mike tagged me in his video, he joked that all of my favorite covers would be X-Men books. And a couple of his commenters said something very similar down below. I'm a huge X-Men fan, guys, but it was never my intention to fill this list out with all X-Men books. Clearly, I don't need to. I have enough cool covers behind me, books that I love. I don't need to do that. But I really didn't want to put an X-Men book on this list. I wanted to like find a cool DC book, like a deep cut. But not only did I have to put an X-Men book on the list, the book I'm choosing is one I talked about really recently on my channel. It kills me I'm adding this book to this list. But the more I thought about it, the more I looked behind me, I could not get away from it. So I apologize, but this book has to make the list. Yep, it's this, a book I talked about like a week ago. This is X-Men number 101 from 1976, written by Chris Claremont, cover art by Dave Cockrum, and of course, this is the first appearance of Jean Grey as the Phoenix for the first time. Listen, guys, John Byrne is my favorite X-Men artist, period. But my favorite X-Men cover artist is Dave Cockrum. I love his covers. I think he has lots of good ones, but of all of the comic books in the entire Chris Claremont run of X-Men, I still think that this one is probably the best. Not probably, this is. This is my favorite cover in the entire Chris Claremont run. I love the way it's composed. It's awesome. It's iconic. Jean Grey coming out of the harbor as the more powerful Phoenix for the first time. I love like the yellow trade dress. I know it's hard to see with Chris Claremont scrawled all over it, but you know, the yellow trade dress matches her outfit. It matches her power set. It really just pops. I think it's a beautiful comic book. Like I said, I tried getting away from it, guys, but this has to be, as an X-Men fan, as a Dave Cockrum fan, if this is, I'm saying, my favorite Chris Claremont, Dave Cockrum X-Men cover, how could it not be on my list? I apologize. I just talked about it recently. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. You can check out that video right here if you want to hear more. But that's it, guys. I tried to get away from it, but it has to round out the top 5. So there you go, guys. That was my top 5 favorite comic covers in my collection. I'm not going to take them all down again. You guys remember them. Head on down to the comments and let me know which of the books I showed you today you like the best. Special thanks to Mike at the Comic Book Corner 2.0 for tagging me. This is a really fun challenge. And to the 3 guys I tagged, Joe, Brian, and Martin, I'm looking really forward to seeing what you guys come up with. And for all of you watching this who are not familiar with those guys, I will put a link down in my description to all their channels. I highly recommend you guys head on over there, check them out, show them some love, and sub them up. They absolutely deserve it, and you will be happy that you found them. That's it, guys. In the meantime, I hope you keep hunting for cool comic book covers in strange and unusual places. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.